Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is another Roma Press live stream. We are here today, only a few days away from Roma Inter, only 2 days away, actually, as Roma are coming off three consecutive victories and they're looking to improve their record against the team that looks to be the team to beat this season, as Inter are clear favorites for the Scudetto this year under Simone Inzaghi. Roma, in the meantime, are going to face probably their first tough opponent under the new Daniele De Rossi regime. But first of all, I wanted to thank everybody that is joining me here tonight. Hopefully, more people come along as the live stream goes on. I remind everybody that if you would like to drop a question, a comment, whatever it is, please do so in the chat below. Always keep it civilized, obviously, so we can be great friends and continue to support Roma together without getting into unnecessary fights. Today, I wanted to talk about what we saw against Cagliari, how that can translate, obviously, on Saturday against Inter, which is going to be a completely different game, completely different opponent, and a completely different stage for Roma and for Daniele De Rossi to showcase their ideas. Once again, Roma almost a full week of preparations, well, 5 days to be exact. Almost a complete squad at De Rossi's disposal with the likes of Chris Smalling, Renato Sanchez, and Leonardo Spinazzola coming back from injury. We can also talk about the latest rumors regarding the sporting director vacancy, which is still there. Tiago Pinto left the club a week ago, and the opening is still there. Roma have not signed anybody to take over the sporting director duties ahead of next season. So there are a few names that have popped up recently, and I think some are really worth looking into. So hopefully that will also be an interesting discussion. If you have thoughts, if you have opinions on that, who would you like to see lead Roma's sporting area? Please do so in the comments below. I know we have some diehard Massara fans in our patron group chat on WhatsApp. We have also people who rate and value all the other candidates that are from abroad, such as Thomas Mitchell, Christopher Vivel, among the likes. So, first comments, I see our good old patron, Jew. Thank you, Jew. Ciao. I need information. Why is it we can afford Baldanzi? We can get into the Baldanzi deal. Obviously, there's more to say after Baldanzi came on in the second half against Cagliari for a brief cameo, but I think that there's more, obviously, to say about this deal. Javid, Andy, do you think the teams we defeated were weaker rather than Roma being exceptionally strong? That's a good question. I think that's a good starting point, Javid. Thank you for bringing it up. Because obviously that is the big question. It is the big question with Daniele De Rossi, coming in 3 weeks ago in the place of Jose Mourinho, and a very, I think, tense atmosphere in and around Trigoria. In my opinion, there is also a lot of doubts and questions going around the Trigoria halls with regards to Tiago Pinto's replacement. That is a situation that I think is still unresolved, and up until that situation is resolved, the air that you will be breathing at Trigoria will be just as tense. Perhaps a bit so with Mourinho's departure. There was definitely something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. That to me is my first impressions, obviously, but based on the things that the players have been saying and talking about how Daniele De Rossi brought something extra, something that they didn't know could be had at this point in the season, I think it's pretty evident that something broke, and so now with this easy stretch of games that De Rossi had at his disposal, I think that was ideal in the sense of if there was a moment where you could make mistakes, it was against the likes of Salernitana and Hellas Verona with regards to experimenting, because I think both games Obviously, Salernitana perhaps the worst showing of out of all the three games that De Rossi managed officially. We're not taking into account the friendly and Riyadh, obviously. But those glimpses were there, and then obviously Cagliari was on a whole other level. The fact that you were able to open up the scoreline in the first 2 minutes obviously was huge for Roma and to set the tone for the rest of the night. So Cagliari was a very pleasant surprise, but does it say the whole story, right, Javid? I think that's where we are all driving at, is whether Roma can show the same things, the same good things that they've shown against Cagliari, to a lesser degree against Salernitana and Verona, against Inter. We are talking about, in my opinion, there is no question about it, the team that will lift the Scudetto at the end of the season. Definitely best Roma podcast in English. Greetings from Bosnia and Forza Roma. Thank you so much for your support all the way from Bosnia. We're happy to hear that. This is just a reminder, if you're new to the show, if you're new to this channel, this is where you find all the video episodes of the podcast. And this is where we also do these live streams. I usually try to schedule them in advance. So if you have just subscribed, click on the little bell and that says notify me, and you'll be notified anytime I schedule one of these, so you know in advance when to tune in. And if you like what we do at Roma Press for the website and for the podcast, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Roma Press. That really helps us. So we have a wonderful community of patrons, and there is also some cool merchandise that you can get. So please consider becoming a patron in 2024. For the open sporting director role, how likely will a profile like François Modesto, Monza director, be the best fit for us versus someone either from the Red Bull family, Vivel or Mitchell, or Liverpool, Ward or Edwards? That is a good question. I will make sure to come back to it as soon as we're sort of done previewing this match against Inter, but I'll keep it in mind. Thank you, Vic, for the question. Definitely an interesting discussion to be had there. With Roma going into this Inter match, we will see whether they will stick by to the obviously, well, the formation is one thing, right? So by all accounts, Angelino is fine. He's healthy. He's not injured. He just came off with cramps in the match against Cagliari. That was partly because he hadn't played a full game since November. So it was to be expected, but we are safe there. Angelino once again put on an incredible performance and showed once again that if you have a reliable fullback, you can resolve a lot of issues. Angelino in the first half in the match against Cagliari was the player with most touches among the Roma team. So that is very interesting to me because, when was the last time a left back had the most touches for Roma? Kolarov. That was the good old days of Alexander Kolarov. Some people liked him, some people hated him, but Kolarov was undeniably the engine of the Roma that reached the Champions League semifinal. He was their just absolute soul, heart and soul, and also basically a regista on the flank. If you had no idea what to do with the ball, you gave it to Kolarov and he would figure it out. Obviously with the powerful shot that he had and the amazing free kicks, that helped a lot. But Angelino, clearly De Rossi rates him a lot in terms of technique because the instructions were obvious. Give the ball to Angelino, and Angelino delivered a number of really impressive crosses that absolutely blew us all away after having to suffer through those displays from Spinazzola and Zalewski. So it was a pleasant surprise. But with regards to the formation, again, I don't expect a number of changes. I expect to see the same lineup in the attack: Romelu Lukaku, Paulo Dybala. There is, in my opinion, there is no way that for a match of this caliber, De Rossi will not make use of that midfield trio: Pellegrini, Cristante, Paredes. Clearly his guys that he's played with, guys that he knows. in my opinion, that is, Bove will be an amazing player coming off the bench for De Rossi. But if Paredes is suspended, if Cristante is not suspended, and if Lorenzo Pellegrini is available, that's his starting midfield. Because I think there is, with De Rossi, at least for now, he clearly came in with the intention of, I'm going to rely on the guys that I know. Because as we've said many, many times on the podcast, Roma need guarantees above everything else. And with Mourinho's exit, the team was shaky. You need something reliable to fall back on. Eduardo Bove has been excellent, but I think in a match of this caliber, De Rossi will still go with his three former teammates. And defense, obviously, we have Gianluca Mancini. We have crazy Rick Karsdorp, who came out alive against Cagliari. That was unbelievable. The way he celebrated that goal that was ruled offside was hilarious. It was just incredible to see him get so excited. I don't think Rick Karsdorp had been so excited since Roma lifted the Conference League trophy in 2022. So that's another pleasant surprise. Javid, with all due respect to Mourinho, I don't recall us playing with such energy and brightness, even when winning against weaker teams, as we have done under De Rossi. Well, Javid, I will play the devil's advocate. I will say that that this is to be expected when you have a managerial change. The one thing that you have to guarantee is a reaction, and the one thing that most often occurs is a reaction. Why is it always so complicated to face a team that has just changed coaches? Because you don't know what to expect. One thing you know what to expect, and that one thing is that the team will fight, the team will try to get off to a fresh start. And I think that's what happened with Roma. Clearly, this is a team that perhaps felt a bit down, perhaps did not believe enough in itself. And what De Rossi came on and did in the opening week, in my opinion, that's something that he achieved from the get-go in the first 3 days, is get those guys together and say, I see you, I know what you're made of, and I like it. I like that you have quality, you have technique. And I guess sometimes it's as simple as that. Or at least if you come in mid-season, that's the one thing you should do, is get those guys going again. Because we've seen Rick Karsdorp came alive. Leandro Paredes came alive. Cristante, did you see where Cristante was playing against Cagliari? He was constantly running up and down on that flank, allowing Karsdorp to move up forward. But Cristante himself was put into situations where he could see the frame of the goal. And if you have a guy on the team that wants to score and could score more, that's definitely Brian Cristante. So I don't expect that to change. I would like to see against Inter, because again, far from guaranteed. This is a match that you're not the favorite, you're the underdog. If you get a result, it's unbelievable, but I don't expect that to happen. But what I think could happen is for Roma to not show that helplessness that they showed before, right? In that first leg against Inter, you could argue that was it was a necessary performance. You didn't allow Inter too much. You allowed them one shot on goal, and that's what they came out with: one shot on goal, one goal. But in my opinion, it felt again like a Roma that does not know how to move and does not know how to react. And I hope and I think we're not gonna get that from Roma this time. That doesn't mean we're not gonna lose, but I would like to believe that Roma will maintain the shape, the attitude that they've had in these opening 3 games. It would be so important to see Roma not doubt themselves, right? That's what we've been doing time and time again this season. That's why it's been so frustrating, because there has been even less consistency than what we're used to. And we're Roma fans, so we have inconsistency stapled on our foreheads. Let's see. Ciao, Andy. Do you think we'll be more conservative with this match compared to the Daniele De Rossi matches so far, given the incredible potency of the Inter attack? I don't know, because as long as you play in front of your fans, it always feels like this team just really gives something more when they're playing at home. I mean, compare the light and day between Hellas Verona and Salernitana. Both games were shaky. Roma in the second half uh, had to Hellas Verona, came alive. Okay, that was they let the opponent back in. They they took a lot of risks there. Against Salernitana, it was from the get-go, you knew the team lacked ideas and the team was not confident. In my opinion, that's not what happens in the Stadio Olimpico. So I would like to believe that they realize that Inter are good, but they have nothing to lose at this moment in time. Really, there's nothing to lose. And we saw what Juve did. Juve tried to contain Inter. It didn't work out for them. It really didn't. So the one chance that Vlahovic got, the one time he got the ball to his feet, he squandered it, and that was it. That was game, set, match for Juve. So I don't think we're gonna get that from Roma. If anything, they're gonna get beat, and they could get beat bad, because that's Inter have that much quality. But I don't expect De Rossi's message in the dressing room to be conservative, watch out, park the bus. I think at this time anything goes. Anything goes, because he believes that this team can deliver um, on the promises that they make to each other in the dressing room. I mean, that's my feeling when I listen to him talk in the press conferences. It's pretty clear that the guy has been able to get something across to the dressing room. And mid-season, it was that is to me the most important thing. What would you need to see from now on to feel the Rossi warrants remaining next season? Well, I mean, obviously, eh, listen, there. That's a very good question, Joe, because I've been thinking about it, and in my mind, De Rossi has something there that reminds me of a bit like Luciano Spalletti, right? The summer he wins the Scudetto with Napoli, and he feels like that's it. He can't do more. He can't do more than that. That's it. You're not going to get better. You're just going to get worse. And I think that's, for me, that's the dilemma that I have. Do you confirm De Rossi if he reaches Champions League football? Obviously, that's a huge if, a huge if to be had in February as we are recording this. But what if that happens? Do you confirm him, and does he accept? Because someone like De Rossi, who I understand he said in his opening press conference, I'll fight tooth and nail to stay here. I don't know how he would react if the team were to reach the established objectives. I really don't know. I really think that it would be interesting to see De Rossi become part of the long term project that Roma are clearly trying to initiate, and that's another thing that taps into the questions and discussions regarding the new sporting director. Is what does a deal like Baldanzi say about the future? If somebody like Baldanzi is so highly wanted in that final week of the January window, to the point that Roma invest and the Friedkins out of their own pocket try to invest 10 million immediately. What does that say about the future of Baldanzi and the future of De Rossi, right? So I would definitely think that if anything warrants him staying, it's Champions League football. Obviously, there's ways and ways of going about it, because if you see clear improvement, an improvement that is not by chance, because some might argue that these first three games were so easy, they've been on cruise control, right? Because we faced three relegation candidates. Um, One could argue that was easy, and that these results and these performances were by pure luck, momentum. What else? But if this team shows that they know how to play football, and perhaps they still fail to reach Champions League, but if they show that they can play football, I don't know if then you don't think about that. And I don't know if it's not already a thought in Roma's mind. Again, the Baldanzi deal is very intriguing because of that, because its implications on the coaching decision for next season. So Nino, our good friend Nino. Ciao, Andy. What do you think this game means for our season, win or loss? Well, I mean, losing to Inter, who are just cruising and who are imposing themselves on every stage against every team, who have basically everybody performing at 100% right now. And then putting it against a team that has just sacked its manager, who had been here 2.5 years. So for 2.5 years, they had gotten used to playing one way, and then replacing him with somebody who's inexperienced and with somebody who's trying to figure things out. And then you add to that there's this whole inner turmoil, I think, within Roma's management. I don't know if a loss against Inter is that big of a deal. It's a big of a it's big. It's a big deal. Obviously, if you look at the table, if you look at who's behind us, who's ahead of us, because it's so tightly packed. But if you're allowed to drop points, but obviously drop points in an honorable way, and in a way that doesn't make me and John come on the podcast and be all miserable and depressed because the team once again showed that they're clearly inferior to Inter. That's a whole other ball game. But I want to believe that against Inter you show good things, you maintain that same rhythm, that same tempo, and that same quickness, the pace, the just, it clicks. When it clicks, it clicks. And I think what we've seen in these last 3 games is that when this team clicks, like on that second goal against Cagliari, magic happens. Like, it's possible. We've gotten that. At least we have that notion, right? That it's not all ye who enter abandon hope, right? No, it's you've got hope. There is hope. There is quality. These players actually can play with each other. So somebody like Lorenzo Pellegrini, hey, he's back. He's back to scoring goals. He's back to collecting assists. What is this? Are we back in 2021? No, it's possible. It's possible, and I think that's why against a loss against Inter would not be that big of a deal if you are able to preserve the fundamentals that De Rossi is trying to pass on to you. Um, do we go back to trusting Smalling that he will return to his last season form? That's a good question, because obviously, again, Smalling will be on the bench on Saturday. He's coming off over 5 months absence. So that's a long time, man. And in my opinion, this is a guy who's still far away from seeing the pitch, but they're just gonna put him on the bench, to keep him with the team, to keep him uh, providing the fans with some kind of reassurance that yes, he's still alive. But I don't see Smalling playing anytime soon, at least not until the return leg against Feyenoord. You have to consider 5 months away for a guy who just joined group training less than a week ago, I believe. That's a big deal. So, but I do think that the ideal solution for De Rossi would be to have the duo of Mancini and Smalling as the starting lineup. That was the whole intention of Mourinho as well. It was to have Ndika as the backup, and Llorente, obviously. So Llorente and Ndika as the main backup options, and then Gianluca Mancini and Chris Smalling, they continue to start. That was not meant to be. So we're going to see how this unfolds with Chris Smalling. I think Renato Sanchez is much closer to playing. He was actually warming up against Cagliari, so I think without Angelino's cramps, Renato Sanchez would have gotten a chance. But can Smalling be important? Smalling can always be important just because of his experience. This is a guy who is is beloved in the dressing room and has an authority on the pitch. So no matter what shape he's in, he can be important. We think back to, what was it? Was it Fonseca's second season? So Smalling's second season at Roma, where he was on and off and injured for also a very long time. Well, the few times that he played that season, he was still great, but he was just unavailable for the majority of that campaign due to injuries. So if he's available, Smalling is your man, especially with Europa League heating up. This is a guy that you want to have based on his experience alone. So it will be interesting to see how De Rossi is able to restructure this whole team, because right now, with Sardar Azmoun also coming back from international duty, he could be back in Rome tomorrow. So theoretically, he could be on the bench against Inter. De Rossi has a full squad available to him, with the exception of Tammy Abraham and Evan Dika, who's away with his national team for AFCON. So in God knows how long, we will have almost a complete bench in a crucial part of the season. So this is going to be interesting. How a manager like De Rossi, who clearly wants to find a way to have everybody on the team playing his brand of football, which is based on possession. Players cannot be scared of touching the ball. And that's something that we've seen in these opening three games, but it will be interesting to see how can Renato Sanchez contribute. Tommaso Baldanzi, when does he get his big chance? Can he be important right away for Roma, or is that an afterthought? Is that something that you'll eventually come to terms with as the season progresses and eventually winds to an end? Is he your long-term project instead of, say, Paulo Dybala? So that will be definitely interesting. Hi, Andy. It seems that Lukaku is burnt out. I don't know. I mean, he still had a number of chances, and he actually scored. Obviously, it didn't count. But I think this is a guy who, for so long, had not seen a single ball against Cagliari. He saw plenty of them. He didn't know what to do. That's another important thing. In a game of this caliber against his former team, Lukaku must be present and the team must involve him, because we all remember what happened at the San Siro. Lukaku was completely cut off. He was a non-factor. You cannot allow yourself to have players such as Lukaku or Dybala and then not utilize them. So that's why it was refreshing to see Paulo Dybala back to his last season form, where he was the key player for Roma. I hope to see more of that, and I hope to see that De Rossi more and more work closely with him in order to sort of get him back and running. And perhaps that Baldanzi presence, the presence of somebody who is basically your tiny younger replica, can be a stimulating factor for him. Yeah, I saw Asmoon's goal in the match against Qatar. Great. I don't know why, but I think Saturday's game is going to be a win. Well, I think, Joseph, the one thing that we can all agree on is that there is a sense of change, right? So we, at least we can hope. At least we can try and think that we don't know what this team is about, because right now this team is undergoing several changes. The whole demeanor of the team is undergoing a change, so that would be great, I think, to if we can dream on, if we can hang on and dream on and think of a positive result on Saturday, then hey, the season is back, right? Because I think after the loss against Lazio in the derby, and especially after the loss against Milan, the main conclusion was this team is out, and let's wrap it up. Let's move on to next year, right? So, thankfully, right now we've postponed that discussion. We've put it on hold. So, okay. Do you believe De Rossi is feeling pressured due to expectations of a shocking performance against Inter, or is he more relaxed because he's considered the underdog for tomorrow's match? I think De Rossi is trying to enjoy himself. Honestly, I see him super relaxed, super happy in the press conferences. Obviously, the results have been going his way, but I really think that he's just making the best of this opportunity. And if there is a guy who knows how to handle these moments, it's him, because he's been through so many experiences with coaches whose jobs were on the line at this particular time in the season, even in recent memory, in those final years with, say, Di Francesco, that he knows the dynamics, he knows how to read the room, and right now he's got it figured out. Right now Roma are doing what he wants them to do, so I wouldn't worry about De Rossi feeling the pressure. um I'm happy that Rossi made a lot of these players look alive again. Yeah, this is a big positive and a huge reason why we can be a bit hopeful, right? Um, so I just wanted to see if we have more comments about tomorrow's match. If not, I will move on to the topic of the sporting director. We would need a lot of luck. Well, football is all about luck. If that ball that Juve delivered to Vlahovic is controlled just a little bit better, perhaps not as strong, and Vlahovic just manages to get a proper shot off, maybe we're talking about a different result for Juve and Inter. So luck is always a big thing. But at the Stadio Olimpico, anything is possible, right? So Inter has lost 2 matches since the Champions League final. Yeah, it's it's pretty impressive. But hey, we need fairy tales, right? So Daniele De Rossi, perhaps there is a fairy tale there. Any thoughts about Saudi investors, Javid? I don't know what to tell you. I see these questions in the comments. Um, I've tried to refrain from publishing some of the articles because some of these articles in recent days that have been coming out of the Italian press, and more specifically from some more local based outlets. They When you read them, they even mention by themselves that Roma outright denied it before the piece was even published. So before the editor sent publish, the piece had already been denied by Roma. I don't know what to tell you because those are rumors. In my opinion, if you're talking about a summer revolution, if you're talking about bringing in younger players, you're not talking about a club that is trying to sell. You're not talking about owners who are disinterested. The Friedkins, like Daniele De Rossi said, are super close to the team in these days. They are constantly in touch with De Rossi. Ryan Friedkin is always there. Dan Friedkin travels more for business, but Ryan Friedkin is always there talking to De Rossi, attending those training sessions. So just from an outsider perspective, because again, I don't have the insights into this. In my opinion, that is not what an ownership does when they're trying to sell. When Pallotta was trying to sell, Roma were a disaster zone. Roma had nobody that could get in touch with Paulo Fonseca. There was nobody. There is no owner. There was no director. There was no advisor. Everything was done through agents. Guido Fienga was running the show, not knowing what to do. So I just, from an outsider perspective, I think there is a lot of talk just because of the sponsorship with Riyadh. Now, does that mean that Roma are not looking for investors? That I wouldn't say. But I think the Friedkins are far too invested into this deal for them to just dismiss it so quickly. So obviously we will also have to see how the talks for the Stadio della Roma progress, right? There should be some important updates in the coming weeks. So, okay, so we can move on to this sporting director discussion that I think a lot of people are excited about because, again, right, the names keep popping up, and a lot of it has to do with who Roma want to be starting from next season. Guys, if I see that I appreciate there's almost 30 of us. If you could just click like, because I see that we have only 15 likes. If you could click like, we can get this live stream more available to more people, and can have more people coming in. So if you haven't already, click the like button, please. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so right now. So we have the first question for Vic. For the open sporting director role, how likely will a profile like Francois Modesto, the Monza technical director — he's not the sporting director, he's the technical director — be the best fit for us versus someone either from Red Bull family, so Vivell or Mitchell, or Liverpool, Ward, Edwards? Well, the latter profiles of Ward and Edwards have been mentioned once, and they haven't come up again. I think the race right now is tightening. I think Roma are trying to prioritize this decision. That is something that they've been focusing on for the past few weeks. We've obviously known of Thiago Pinto's departure since December, I believe. Yes, it was right before Christmas that Thiago Pinto announced he was going to leave Roma. So discussions have been going on. We know that Thomas Mitchell for sure has held talks. So the former Monaco director, Southampton, Tottenham, blah blah blah. We have Christopher Vivel also engaging in negotiations with Roma, but a lot of it has also been about people who work in Serie A. So as you mentioned, Francois Modesto. We have obviously a lot of the fan favorite Frederic Massara, who used to work for Roma during the Sabatini days and the early Monchi era. And we have the latest name that I think got me excited today is the Atalanta sporting director Tony D'Amico, which, I mean, that name alone sounds like a character from The Simpsons. Tony D'Amico is the sporting director for Atalanta since 2022. He's responsible for some of their best deals in the last few years, for Cup Miners, for Ederson, for De Caltere from Milan. He has also worked previously for Hellas Verona, and he did miracles there, uncovering a lot of young talent, and generating a lot of revenue for a club that was able to stay up in Serie A for as long as it did, mainly because of D'Amico's work. So I think that's a profile that is very interesting to me, and I think that's a discussion that Roma are having right now. Is what do we do? Do we go? Do we focus on Italy? Do we want to have that experience? Do we want to have those connections, or do we want to start something more international? Again, Roma are trying to get this brand going. You know, this idea. The Friedkins are trying to make Roma the people's team all over the world. That is evident with the friendlies that they've been organizing, the latest sponsorship deal, the tours in Japan, the failed tour in Korea, obviously. So that's been something that doesn't entirely match with somebody like Francois Modesto, right? A technical director for Monza, not a sporting director. He works behind Adriano Galliani, previously worked for Olympiacos with Roma CEO Lina Soluco. So that's the main connection that we're going with. And then you have Frederic Massara, who worked for Roma and then obviously worked for Milan and helped build that Scudetto winning squad with Paolo Maldini. So that's all interesting. And I think the Baldanzi deal is interesting because of that. Because the Baldanzi deal is intriguing. The Baldanzi deal doesn't scream, hey, this is a player who, this is Thomas Mitchell's favorite player. This is Christopher Vivel's favorite player. Or we had recently Florian Maurice from Rennes, right? Tommaso Baldanzi is a player that was on the radar only of Italian clubs. He was not drawing interest from England, Germany, France. He was strictly a player that was on the radar of many Italian teams, and so this whole pursuit of somebody like Baldanzi, this determined pursuit, so late in the window, how does that fit into a new sporting director's idea of what Roma want to be, right? Because Baldanzi clearly comes in here as a potential replacement of Paulo Dybala. Let's remember, Paulo Dybala has only one more year left on his current deal with Roma. There have not been negotiations to renew his contract. Dybala's contract expires in 2025. The player has been trying to get a new deal with Roma with a higher salary and a longer date. But that's the negotiations haven't happened yet. I don't know if they will happen. But the Baldanzi deal taps into that as well, because Baldanzi is that backup, but also Baldanzi is the long-term option. With Baldanzi, you make a very important investment, because when was the last time you heard Roma and 15 million in the same sentence? Obviously, it's more or less 10 in a straight payment and then 5 in add-ons. So still, that's so late in the window in January for a player who's 20 years old and whose entire profile is all about trying to replicate what Paulo Dybala does on the pitch. That is, in my opinion, the idea that Roma are heading in a direction, and I don't know if you all can agree on this with me, but that, in my opinion, says a lot about what kind of profile they want to go for in terms of the sporting director. You don't sign somebody like Baldanzi if you then are in the summer are going to bring in somebody who's going to try and replicate what Roma have been doing for the past few seasons by bringing in big names such as Lukaku, Dybala, Wijnaldum. That is a profile that you bring in if you're about to appoint a sporting director who believes in young talent, who believes in scouting, who believes in those hidden gems that are hidden in Europe. Because again, Baldanzi is not unlike Marcos Leonardo, who had the attention of every big club in Europe. Unlike Savio, who is now at Girona, but he's going to go to Manchester City, and he was also linked to Roma. Baldanzi, not the international profile. He's the profile that somebody who is well aware of how Serie A works. And obviously Roma, with their connections with Beppe Rizzo, Baldanzi's agent, a really powerful agent in Italy. That to me points in the direction of somebody like François Modesto. It points to me in the direction of somebody like Tony D'Amico. So that's why I say, when you ask me about Saudi investors, I say it's a no-go in my opinion, because these are not the moves that a club that would be willing to sell in the summer makes. These are in the moves of a club that it says we're here to stay and we're trying to work things out. One project ended, another one is going to start soon, right? The Mourinho era has come to an end. Like it or not, it has come to an end. Whether it's successful or not, we're going to have to evaluate it in the summer, because that's when it's going to officially end. But the idea of these last 2.5 years of trying to get, the big name, the appeal, this and that, well, that will have to probably take a back seat, as Roma have to obviously fulfill that notorious financial fair play regulation, right? The constraints, the request of generating 60 million in revenue. How Roma go about doing that, I don't know. Please don't ask me, because that is something I'm not informed in. I we can always guess, right, who will be sacrificed, whatever. Hey, maybe Roma are able to pull off a miracle. But one project ended, and with the Baldanzi deal in place, with somebody like Angelino also coming in, because let's not underestimate, the Angelino deal. This is a player who in no way, shape, or form comes in if Mourinho is still here, because he's not, that profile is too different. So whatever happens with Angelino, how that turns out, in my opinion, the message is clear. We're going a different route. And that route screams somebody who has Serie A experience. So it's not my preference. I don't know what, I don't have a preference. Everybody says, well, he needs to speak Italian. Well, he needs to know this and that. At the end of the day, in Italy, when you're operating in the Italian market, you're approached by the same people over and over and over again. So you will, even if you're coming in from the outside, you'll still have to make the acquaintance of this agent, of that agent, of Pastorello, Beppe Rizzo, Alessandro Lucci, blah blah blah. But that's the main conclusion. So it's a big question mark that I feel like it's going to be resolved in the next few weeks. I would bet a lot of things that will probably be resolved by the end of this month. Great summary, Andy. This is why I love Livestream. Clears up a lot of the mystique of Roma's moves. I would wager Dybala isn't being renewed if we're going off the Friedkin behavior. I mean, that's my impression as well, right? Because the Friedkins have made it clear. If they want you, they want you, and they resolve that immediately. Just like if they want you, they will announce it right from the get-go. That's happened with the renewal of Cristante, Pellegrini, Gianluca Mancini. Roma wanted that to happen. They made it happen. With Dybala, this thing has been dragging out for far too long. A player who's missed considerable time is still a very important player for Roma, but perhaps Roma's entire plan right now is to try and steer clear of that, because we saw what happens when Roma rely too much on individual talent. That's been Roma's whole big thing. Let's rely on 3 key players and make one player the star of the show. Well, perhaps it doesn't work like that when that star player is somebody who is physically fragile, like Dybala, or like Lukaku, who, in the absence of service, becomes useless. So maybe Roma right now are thinking, well, let's focus on making this a functional team in the first place, right? Let's try and get this group of people playing again, and then focus on who's important, who's less important, who needs to be the star of the show, if anyone. So, and that's why I think it's a good thing that we're back here and we're back for this game against Inter with our hopes up, at least our hopes slightly up compared to the first leg. I think that is important because the season seemed lost. Now, if you talk to anybody in Rome, okay, they will feel sad, they will feel upset about Jose Mourinho leaving. That is something that is still deemed a controversial decision in the local fan base. But you can sense that the allure, the magic hasn't gone. Against Cagliari, you had 61,000 people attending that match on a Monday evening. So make that of what you will. I think it's positive that we're here. It's positive that we still have a lot of questions with regards to what Roma want to do, because it's cool. The unpredictability is cool. It can be exciting if you're seeing results on the pitch, or if you're seeing rather the performances on the pitch. The questions taste a little different, taste a little better, right? So I hope that we can come on here, gather around on Saturday night, and talk about a game that once again showed Roma's qualities. I hope that we can come on here, not be miserable and depressed, but actually cheerful and hopeful for a better future, a future where Roma could really compete for that top 4 race. So I want again to thank everyone for joining me tonight. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe and leave a like. And if you would like to support our show and our website, please do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/RomaPress. It really helps. In the meantime, guys, wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for joining me. We will see each other soon. And as always, Forza Roma. Until next time, guys. Ciao.